Richard Enser, E-N-S-E-R, from South Kingstown. Speaking primarily as I'm a former DEM employee. I retired in 2007, where I coordinated the Rhode Island Natural Heritage Program, which essentially is, I'm going to be talking about biodiversity issues. According to the ResilientRhodeIsland.org website, the website created to help explain the purpose of the act to the general public, the effects of climate change in Rhode Island will include rising sea level, increased inland and coastal flooding from more intense storms, extended droughts, and longer and more intense heat waves. What is not included on this list, nor identified elsewhere on the website, is the degradation of the state's biodiversity at the species, ecosystem, and landscape levels. According to the Center for Health and the Global Environment at Harvard, climate change alone is expected to threaten with extinction approximately 1/4 or more of all species on land by the year 2050, surpassing even habitat loss as the greatest threat to life on land. The center points out it is not possible to predict how most species, including our own, and how most ecosystems will respond to climate change, but the effects are likely to be catastrophic. In the minds of most, the term biodiversity is associated with tropical rainforests, coral reefs, and other exotic locales. But all places in the world are dependent on their own unique biological diversity that provides vital ecological services and sustains the lives of all species, including humans. Rhode Island is no exception to this fact of life. The quality of life for Rhode Islanders is dependent on the quality of the natural ecosystems that make up this place, and the index that can be used to assess the quality of those systems is the number of native species they maintain. If we apply that index to Rhode Island, I can report to you that the current condition of most of Rhode Island's natural ecosystems is deplorable. Beginning in 1979 as the program botanist for the Heritage Program, I was responsible.
As the program
botanist.
Okay.
I was responsible for conducting the research and inventory effort to compile the state's list of rare plants, i.e. plants threatened with extirpation from Rhode Island. The latest revision of this list, published in 2015 in the state's Wildlife Action Plan, includes 388 plants, 88 more than was original in the original 1979 list, and roughly 30% of the state's flora. The list has grown because the degradation of two primary ecosystem types, coastal marshes and northern hardwood forests. We've already done a number on these ecosystems. There is less than 50% of their original natural extent of both of these remaining, and what remains has been fragmented into smaller, species-dependent pieces that suffer from the added impacts of advancing exotic invasive species. Unfortunately, as identified by the Manomet Center for Conservation Studies, Manomet Center for Conservation Studies, these two ecosystems are highly vulnerable to the effects of climate change. Brackish marshes will be forced to migrate inland in advance of rising sea level, and their persistence will be highly dependent on the decisions made regarding coastline stabilization efforts. Unfortunately, our society will value more the protection of homes and infrastructure along the coast, and in many places there will be no land onto which these threatened marshes can retreat, and we can expect to see the demise of these natural communities. But more pertinent to the subject at hand here today is the predicted impacts to northern hardwood forest, which in Rhode Island is limited to the northwest part of the state, where the Clear River Energy Center is proposed. The Resilient Rhode Island Act, quote, provides the framework for state government to adaptively manage the problem in the face of changing conditions, including adaptations that, again, quote, protect natural areas and landscape features that buffer changing climatic conditions. The resiliency of forest ecosystems is highly dependent on the amount of forest retained and the ability of that forest to mature and support greater biodiversity. In short, more species allow forest ecosystems to negotiate the effects of climate change without also having to cope with the added stress of invasive species and other impacts associated with fragmentation.
Mr. Enser, 5 minutes is up. Are you near the end?
Yeah, pretty much.
Or do you have
3
welcome
paragraphs.
to submit it?
3 paragraphs. The largest tract of northern hardwood forest in Rhode Island
So
is
just
in the
start
north.
that over again.
Okay. The largest tract of northern hardwood forest in Rhode Island is in the northwest corner of the state, where it abuts additional forest land in Massachusetts and Connecticut. However, even this forest is already undergoing species reductions due to past land use decisions, and now is beginning to feel the impacts of climate change. As such, it is imperative that the existing forest acreage be retained. In 2012, the U.S. Forest Service reported several central principles for mitigating and adapting to climate change in northeastern forests. Among these are prevent forest loss and reduce other stresses on forests. Construction of the Clear River Energy Center within one of the most important forested tracts of this region violates both of these maxims. Construction of the Clear River Energy Center will result in the further degradation of Rhode Island's last tract of northern hardwood forest and further contribute to the decline of biodiversity in Rhode Island. Lastly, let me reiterate that the effects of climate change are already being felt. Many species are already altering this physiology, already shifting ranges, already declining, already becoming extinct. As we are all aware, even if we stopped extracting fossil fuels from the ground tomorrow, many of the predicted impacts of climate change would still take place. But we exacerbate these impacts and extend their effects farther into the future with each decision we make to use more fossil fuel. During her recent appearance before the citizens of Burrillville, Governor Raimondo expressed the following: "I need in my job to look out for all the people of Rhode Island, all the businesses of Rhode Island, make sure that energy is kept as relatively low as we can have it be. But we humans have always made sacrifices in the face of catastrophe. If paying more for energy is what we must be done to stop the runaway train of climate change, then so be it."
Thank you.